This is a child, she went to the School of the Arts. She was smart. She was beautiful. She ate bean sprouts. You know, she didn't want anything chemical in her body. And she was terrified of drugs and chemicals. And for this to happen, I was like, I don't understand. I couldn't understand. And she said, Mama, it's easier for me to stay high than face reality.
My name is Cameron Parrott. I am an American fentanyl orphan. My mother died from fentanyl poisoning, and I really wish she was here to witness this moment, but she is right here.
Heaven was my only child, so she was a little on the spoiled side. We always called her a social butterfly because she was very, very friendly, always had a group of friends, very prissy. I always had to dress just so when she was little. The teachers used to say at school they couldn't wait for her to come in every day so they could see what she was wearing. She was a little diva. She was hilarious. She always made people laugh. When she was 14, she got the idea that she wanted to play the didgeridoo. And I don't know if you know what a didgeridoo is. It's that long Aboriginal horn. And, Heaven was always very tiny. She was like 5'3", and less than 100 pounds. So she learned to play the didgeridoo. And someone told her once that only Aboriginal males could play the didgeridoo. So once she was told that, she mastered playing it. You didn't tell her that she couldn't do anything, because she would definitely prove you wrong. You know, we always think about, oh, I'm going to do this. I'm going to take this picture. I'm going to make a video of this, but I'll do it next time. And then there is no next time. I'm a dual citizen of Canada. I'm born American here in North Carolina, but I raised Heaven in Canada. She did go to the School of the Arts there. She had so many friends. She was allowed to live in Canada as a citizen with all the benefits of being Canadian because I was Canadian. But when she turned 18 and I tried to get her citizenship straight, the Canadian government said that they no longer offered second-generation citizenship. This was quite devastating to her because it's where she grew up. It's where her life was. It's where all her friends were. So I did the right thing. I couldn't send my 18-year-old daughter back to North Carolina alone. I moved back to North Carolina with her. And things started going wrong. When we moved back, and I would tell her, I'd say, Heaven, choose your friends wisely. You did not grow up with these kids. You don't know these kids. She wound up going to a party one night. At that party, she was drugged and she was raped. It's not something I like to talk about. Not something that she would talk about. But that's what happened. She wound up... It was like 3 o'clock the next afternoon before she came to enough to tell me what had happened. And I saw the bruises on her neck, on her arms, on her legs. And so I took her to the ER. At the emergency room, because she was over the age of 18, I was not allowed to go in with her. They wanted to talk to her alone. So she went in the back. And they told her that the person that would handle rape cases, they would have to do a rape kit, and she would have to come from Fayetteville, which was over 2 hours away. And she was okay with that. All right. She stayed back there for a little while, and the next thing I know, she comes running out, and she's just crying, just boo-hooing, sobbing. And I said, Heaven, what in the world is wrong? She said, let's go, Mama. Let's go. And I'm like, why? No, you can't. We have to stay here. We have to do this. We have to do the right thing. They did this to you. She said, Mama, if they treat me like this now, How will they treat me when I go to court? She said that the nurses were very rude to her, that they acted like it was her fault, that she had caused this. They kept saying, well, you realize you're going to have to go to court, don't you? You realize that, don't you? Are you going to stand up there and say this happened? And they made it very, very hard on her. And I think that, you know, some of these young girls that this happens to, that's maybe what happened to them too. You know, that's what put them on this path. Not all of them, I'm not saying all of them, but you know, it was very traumatic. You can't do bad things to good people. And that's what happened. And from that day forward, I tried to get her to stay. She wouldn't. From that day forward, that's when things changed for her. You weren't allowed to talk about it, because if you didn't talk about it, it didn't happen. And that's why I say silence is deadly. And I saw that firsthand. Yep. Shortly after that, she moved away, about 2 hours away from home. She moved to Greensboro. I would go for months and not see her. I talked to her just about every day. But she just did not want to be around those people. She did not want to face reality. She didn't want to have to deal with it. And like I said, in Heaven's mind, if you didn't talk about it, it didn't happen. And that's what she was doing. She was trying to escape. She moved away for almost 2 years. And when she came back, she met a boy. And that was the real downfall. That was her real downfall. When she was away, you know, when she moved away, she worked 3 jobs. She had an apartment. You know, she was doing good. But when she came back, she met a boy shortly after that. And he was a heroin user. And we had no idea. And he's the one that introduced her to hard drugs.
Don't use it. If you see it anywhere, don't touch it. Report. Go to the authorities or anyone with authority. If a parent is there, alert them. If there is anyone of the actual authorities, please alert them. And if you have a phone with you or by you, use that.
I've never tried to hide my daughter's substance abuse. And, you know, sometimes people, they just want to focus on that. You know, the fact that she did have a substance use disorder, they don't want to focus on what caused that substance use disorder. And I don't care that she had a substance use disorder. You know, what is happening in this country, our kids may ask for one thing. They may ask for a Percocet. They may ask for whatever their drug of choice is. But they don't ask for deadly illicit fentanyl. They don't ask to die.
My mother died from a pill. That pill contained a little bit of fentanyl. She died. She went out to a party. I didn't even know.
When she first came back, everything, you know, seemed normal, you know, but she was always with that boy. She was always with him. Yeah. One day she called me and I was at work, and she said that she was sick. She was throwing up. And, of course, anytime Heaven called, I ran. You know, she was my only child, my whole world. So I went and I picked her up, and I was going to take her to the doctors. And when she got in the car, she just started crying. And I'm like, what in the world is wrong, Heaven? And that's when she told me, you know, what was going on. That's when I knew. And at that time, I didn't know anything about, you know, drugs. I didn't know anything about, you know, heroin or any of that. I didn't know. You know, I thought heroin was something that went out in the 70s. Yeah. So I wound up taking her to a detox center. And, you know, I thought that, you know, if I loved her enough, that we'd get through this. You know, I thought that, because, you know, you have to understand, her whole life, anything that went wrong in Heaven's life, I made right. I made it right. But that's the one thing I couldn't make right. You know, and I think about too, you know, on up until about 2013, say 15 years ago, all these kids would have had umpteen chances to get their lives straight, to get sober. They don't have that anymore. We have kids out here at 14, 15 years old that just try something one time and that's it. It's not fair. My daughter should be here. They should all be here. I had sent her to numerous rehabs. I did everything I possibly could to save my child, because that was my job, you know? She was everything to me. I'd had her picked up and, you know, said that she was a threat to herself and a threat to others. I've had her put into, you know, UNC psych ward on 3 different occasions. I did everything I could. The last time, she went to a rehab in Kentucky. And she left on January the 6th. She came by my work that day, and she got out of the vehicle twice, and she hugged me, and she was crying, and she was saying, you know, but it's so far away from you. Heaven never liked to be far from me, because she knew anything that goes wrong, she could call me and I'd be there. She got out of the truck twice that day and she hugged me. I had no idea that that would be the very last time I'd ever lay eyes on my child alive. But it was. It was. Had I known, I would have never let her go. So she went to Kentucky to a rehab. Someone reached out to me a couple of weeks later and said, Heaven wants to come home. And I knew Heaven wanted to come home. She didn't want to stay out there. She said it was just so far. But I wanted her to stay. I wanted her to get her life straight. I wanted her, because, you know, you can't be in the same area. You have to go away, because those same people are there and they will always suck you back in. And I knew that. So I wouldn't bring her home. I wanted her to stay and finish the program. Anyways, that person, without my knowing, brought my child back. I had just gotten off the phone. This was January the 28th, 2019, a night I will never forget. I had just gotten off the phone with a good friend of mine, and we were talking, and I told her, I said, Kathy, I said, for the first time in about 4 years, I can lay down and sleep. I can breathe because I know my child is safe. It wasn't 5 minutes later after I laid down, the phone rang, and my fiance said, I heard him say, oh God, no. He hung up the phone. He went in the living room, and I heard him light up a cigarette. And he said, honey, you need to come in here a minute. And he had to say it about 3 or 4 times. And I think that, you know, maybe my heart knew and my mind wasn't ready to accept. I don't know. But I wouldn't get up at first. And finally I did. I got up and I went in. And that's when he told me. He said, Heaven's gone. I'll never forget those words. Heaven's gone. And he said that I hit the floor, I hit my knees, and he said that I just screamed and screamed. And I remember that. I remember hearing someone scream and realizing it's me. It was me. People that have not had to go through this, they don't know what this is like. It's like everything in you just dies right along with them. My best friend came over. I immediately started throwing clothes on because, you know, my thing was I had to get to her. I had to see her. You know, I had to tell her that it was okay. So from what I understand, the man that brought her home said that when he got there that afternoon, about 5 o'clock, no, it was about 8 o'clock, that he found her lying dead in the floor. Yeah. She had been on the phone, I found out later, with that boyfriend. He said that he heard the phone all of a sudden hit the floor. I was 5 minutes away from my child, only 5 minutes. He could have picked up the phone and called me and said, hey, Heaven's back. I don't know what's going on. But I was talking to her, and all of a sudden I heard the phone hit the floor and a thump. But he didn't. I could have gotten to my child if I had known. One simple phone call is all it would have taken. I have fought for 6 years for justice for my child. The first detective, I'll never forget, when my ex and I walked in to collect my daughter's belongings at the sheriff's department, and he told us to come on back. First thing he starts telling me is how his child is on drugs and she's in Pennsylvania, and you know he doesn't talk to her, and he wished she'd just quit calling because he's tired of her making her mother cry. So my first thought is, right then and there, if he didn't care about his own child, I know he's not going to care about mine. He didn't. He didn't care. You know, and at that time, you know, you have to understand, when I first got that phone call that night, they wouldn't let me go to the hospital to see Heaven. They said no, that it was a homicide investigation. Well, what happened to the homicide investigation? I had to do my own investigating myself. You know, when I got her cell phone back, I went through it with a fine-tooth comb. I got in touch with people that knew her, and I found out whose number this was, who they were, what they did, and everything else I did. Like I said, for 6 years, I have fought to try to get justice for my child. And it's not just my child. You know, the town that she died in, Henderson, North Carolina, Vance County, is second in the state of North Carolina as per capita for fentanyl fatalities. There are numerous parents just like me, and I do know the majority of them. I don't just fight for Heaven, for justice. I fight for them all. And I don't fight for just justice. I fight for awareness to stop this from happening, to stop other parents from having to experience this. But I've learned that there's other ways of justice, to receive justice. The gentleman that brought my daughter home, I went to the person that owned that trailer park. He had a lifetime right to live there. I raised enough hell that they finally got enough evidence on him. They evicted him from his home, tore his house down to the ground. Now, there are multiple girls, 3 other girls that died there. Yes. So I got 2 of the other moms, and he was responsible for their deaths. I got 2 other moms, and we made 4-foot white crosses, and all 3 of us went over there, and we put them up in that yard where that vacant lot is today, and made a video. And I said in that video that we'll huff and we'll puff and we'll blow your house down. And we did. Now, the drug dealer that actually gave her the drugs, every time he goes to court for anything, I'm sitting there with a big poster of my daughter. And I will see to it that anything you do, I'll make sure you get the maximum sentence for. But what I don't understand is, you know, in the state of North Carolina, it can take up to a year. I've seen some take 14 months to get their toxicology and autopsy back. That's ridiculous. They will not even start investigating in a lot of cases until they have those in hand. That drug dealer is like a serial killer. That's exactly what they are. How many people will he kill between that death and that investigation and getting that autopsy and toxicology report within a year's time? because he's not going to stop. And when you arrest them and you put them under the low bonds like they do in the county that my daughter died in, $60,000 bond for death by distribution or for selling large quantities of fentanyl, they're back out on the street most of the time before the ink even dries on the warrant. Right back doing what they were doing, killing other people. I see it every day. No bond for those for death by distribution. No bond. We need stricter penalties, longer sentences. 5 years for death by distribution, although the state law is up to 20 years, but they're lucky if they get 5 years. We recently had a case where they arrested this gentleman and he had enough fentanyl, and this was just a couple of months ago, he went to trial, and they sentenced him. He had enough fentanyl to kill 5.5 million people. The whole state of North Carolina is only 11.5. So he had enough fentanyl to kill almost the half a state of North Carolina. He got 14 years. Will you tell me any other weapon of mass destruction that you could have obtained and only gotten 14 years for? Any weapon of mass destruction capable of killing 5.5 million people. They'd have never seen the light of day again. So what's the difference?